Hello, Key Stage 1. It's Mrs. Curtis again. I'm going to read you a story today called The Great Fire of London. Well, it's actually a true story, isn't it? Year 2. This is your topic at the moment, The Great Fire of London. So you will know a lot about this. I'll just show you the picture here. And you'll know who this person is. So I'm going to read you. It's quite a long story, so it may have to go on more than one video. So, Chapter 1. In 1666, London was already a big city. 500,000 people lived there, and it had grown out beyond the old city walls. The summer of 1666 was very dry. Londoners were working as usual, but it was so hot and the streets were filthy. Tall wooden houses made the narrow lanes airless and dark. There was almost no room for the carts to pass through. "Oi, look what you're doing," cried a raker. "We don't want the plague back this summer." He tried to sweep away sewage as people pushed by. The year before, 100,000 Londoners had died of the plague. Rich people like King Charles II and the Lord Mayor had left London. They wanted clean air and they felt safer out of the city. Chapter 2. Saturday, the 1st of September, was another hot, dry day. In Seething Lane by the Tower of London sat Samuel Pepys, clerk to the Navy. I think you know who he is, Year 2. Every day he wrote something in his diary about work or life in London. Today he wrote about the danger of the drought. "Everything is tinder dry. The Thames is much too low. There's a strong east wind too." "Oh dear," Pepys was worried. "I must speak to an astrologer," he decided. "I hope Mr. Lilly can tell me what will happen. He says there will be a disaster. I foresee it." Few people were about that night. Robbers, known as footpads, hid in the shadows. Children holding lanterns let rich people home safely. At midnight in Pudding Lane, the baker, Thomas Fariner, checked his ovens. Then he went upstairs and fell fast asleep. Outside, a warm east wind blew clouds of dust across the street. Chapter 3. Later, the baker told his story. "I woke up choking. It was 2 o'clock. My maid was coughing. There was smoke everywhere. That's when I rushed outside. I don't know where my maid is." An hour later, his house was just smoke and ash. The flames spread first to the Star Inn, then a gust of wind, and whoosh, sparks fell on the warehouses by the river. The pitch, oil and brandy inside the buildings made the flames worse. Thames Street was an inferno. He's saying, "What can we do? Run for our lives. Who will fight the fire?" At his home in Gracechurch Street, the Lord Mayor woke up. He raised his head from the pillow. "Psh, it's only a small fire," he yawned, and he went back to sleep. Next morning, the east wind was still blowing fiercely. 300 houses had burnt to the ground. A man shouted, "Fish Street Hill is all on fire!" Pepys heard the news from his maid. He hurried to the top of the Tower of London to see for himself. "Everything will burn, even the churches. I must tell the king." On his way to the palace at Westminster, Pepys met a lot of angry people. Some thought God had sent the fire, and other people said foreigners in London had started it. Pepys just blamed dry weather and a foolish baker. Pepys found the king at last and told him the dreadful news. King Charles took command at once and ordered, "First pull down houses in the fire's path, then set up fire posts. My brother James will help." But even a king could not hold back a fire like this. Flames soared 30 metres into the city sky and the sun shone red like blood. No one knew how to stop the flames. "There's not enough water in the Thames to put the fire out." The fire spread west and north. People stayed in their homes as long as they dared. At the very last moment, they fled in boats called wherries or on foot. Luckily, carters made a big profit. Pepys saw terrified pigeons die because they didn't want to leave their houses. "But my wife and I will escape, and I will come back home tomorrow to bury my wine and cheeses." Chapter 4. It was Tuesday now, the third and worst day of the fire. All Cheapside shops were ablaze, and so was Ludgate Hill and Fleet Street. The fire was so hot that even the stones of old St. Paul's were burning. "Flames are wading through the streets," said the poet Dryden. John Evelyn, who also kept a diary at the time, wrote that at night time it was light as day for 10 miles around. 10,000 houses, all in one flame. Melted lead was running down the street. That lead came from St. Paul's Cathedral. It fell from the roof where sparks hit the timbers. Wall stones exploded and even the pavements below were glowing with heat. The next day, St. Paul's Cathedral was a ruin. By the broken east wall, a schoolboy called Thomas Taswell saw a body of an old woman, and her clothes were burnt. every limb reduced to coal. Everyone feared the whole city would burn, but the king rode straight to the fire, where he leapt from his horse to grab a fire hook. With a quick tug he brought the burning roof thatch down. Then he put it out with a bucket of water. People were happy to see their brave king. Still, the flames spread north and west to Cripplegate and Fetter Lane. It made Pepys sad to see the ruins. Hot ashes burnt through his shoes. Near the smoking remains of the Royal Exchange, he saw a shivering cat, all its fur burnt off, but still alive. Chapter 5. But then a miracle happened. The east wind dropped. Now a breeze blew gently from the north. The fire had come to an end. Amazingly, only 6 people had died. The survivors huddled together in Moorfields and Spitalfields. Their sad little bundles held all their belongings that they could save from the fire. 200,000 people of all ranks and degree in the fields live near the city, wrote Evelyn. The king had to act. We will have an inquiry, he said. First, clear the rubble, bring these people food and drink and make them shelters. Then he looked over at the ruins. There was a lot to talk about. How to stop more fires, how to rebuild London. But which first? No one could agree. The king thought, I want a new grand city. Build me one like Paris. Clever Christopher Wren, the new surveyor of the king's works, was just the man to grant Charles his wish. Wren's London plan was excellent. It was every bit as grand as King Charles had hoped, but the king couldn't afford everything in it. He spent all his money on a war against France. In the end, Christopher Wren built 51 new churches, each with a magnificent spire and a great new domed St. Paul's Cathedral. That was finished in 1711. Every single new building had to be built of brick and stone because wood burnt too easily. After the fire, there were other regulations. The city set up fire brigades. People were careful to sweep up their rubbish, and unlike the baker Thomas Fariner, everyone made their household ashes safe at night. It took 10 years and more than £7 million to rebuild London. Today, if you go to London, you might like to visit St. Paul's or the Monument. Christopher Wren built that too, and it stands near Pudding Lane where the Great Fire began. And I have actually been to the Monument, and you can climb up. I think it's 300 steps. So that's really interesting to go to if you can. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, Key Stage 1. Bye.